All right. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. We are back. We are continuing with our look at the triennial Torah portion. This week we're going to be dealing with Numbers chapter 30. Numbers chapter 30. And we are going to say that this here is called Mattot. Mattot, the tribes. Numbers chapter 30. Okay, so we're going to deal with the what we see in the text dealing with vows. And also, there's some things that are alluded to in the text that we want to also try to bring out here. We'll go ahead and I think we'll just read, I believe it's just about 16 so verses. We'll just read through the chapter and then we'll just go back from there. Let me just go ahead and pull up the chapter, put the verses on the screen here, and we will go ahead and begin to read it to the end here. So let me go ahead and put that up on the screen. All right, very good. So go ahead and read 16 chapter there, nice and loud.
And Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the word which Yahweh has commanded. When a man vows a vow to Yahweh, or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he does not break his word. He does according to all that comes out of his mouth. Or if a woman vows a vow to Yahweh and binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father was kept silent toward her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement with which she has bound herself stands. But if her father forbids her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows nor her agreements by which she has bound herself stand. And Yahweh pardons her because her father has forbidden her. But if she at all belongs to a husband while bound by her vows, or by a rash utterance from her lips, which she bound herself, and her husband hears it, and he has kept silent towards her on the day that he hears, then her vows shall stand, and her agreements by which she bound herself do stand. But if her husband forbids her on the day that he hears it, then he has nullified her vow which she vowed, and the rash utterance of her lips by which she bound herself, and Yahweh pardons her. But any vow of a widow or a divorced woman by which she has bound herself stands against her. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound herself by an agreement with an oath, and her husband heard it, and has kept silent towards her, and did not forbid her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement by which she bound herself stands. But if her husband clearly nullified them on the day he heard them, then whatever came from her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the agreement binding her, it does not stand. Her husband has nullified them, and Yahweh pardons her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict her being, let her husband confirm it, or let her husband nullify it. But if her husband is altogether silent at her from day to day, then he confirms all her vows, or all the agreements that bind her. He confirms them because he kept silent towards her on the day that he heard. But if he nullifies them after he has heard, then he shall bear her crookedness. These are the laws which Yahweh commanded Moshe between a man and his wife, and between a father and his daughter, in her youth, in her father's house.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So we want to go back and look at some of these things. When we look at this chapter and see the things that are within it, we are able to see that there's many things that people strive to do in word, but it seems at times that they are unable to realize these things that they strive to do in word. They're hardly ever able to realize these things in deed because they're missing some very important components which we see alluded to in this chapter here. When we think about people that identify as, that's funny when I just even say that phrase, people that identify as Israel, want to bring back the quote unquote Hebrew culture, right? That's, you have your clothes, that's the easy one because it kind of just deals with your own self, right? You get your tassels or your fringes or your, whichever one you prefer, or both, the different things that you do. Another thing that people identify with this Hebrew culture in this time is the multiple wives and marriage. They want to bring it back to the Hebrew culture, and part of that, they look back and they see that the forefathers had multiple wives, so they say, that's, I want to do that too, right? Because that's the Hebrew culture. This is our ways. We want to bring it back to the ways of the book and the things that the people did at that time. But when we look at these things that these people do, wanting to have these customs or traditions or things, there's things that it seems that people are leaving out. When we think about, for instance, the idea of multiple wives. When we look back, when we go back to creation, the Most High, He made a man and a woman. If we go back to creation and He creates a man and multiple women, then we could say, well, this is the blueprint. This is the pattern. When he took ribs out of Dom, and then we could say that this is the original way, right? But when we look back and we see the original way, it was Adam and Hava. And in fact, when we look back and see and look at the deception that was involved, Adam didn't throw Hava away for another. He went along with the punishment and did, what she did. He could have just said, well, I'll just, I'm not gonna follow after what you doing. I'll just take me another one.
On to the next.
Just give me another one of these. But this one don't act right. But they both together, went and they fell. And there's things that we look at, and things that people bring up that will deal with in this particular chapter when we talk about the roles of men and women and headship in particular. When we look at this, and people equating the woman's subjection to her husband, something that's a sin thing, something that's as a result of sin. But man was always the head of his woman. That was not a result of the curse. That wasn't a result of sin. When we look back in the creation story, if we was to look at Genesis chapter 2, we see that the man was created first. Genesis 2:7. The woman then was derived from man and created for man. Okay, we see that in Genesis chapter 2:22. Instructions were given to the man, and then he had the responsibility to go and share the instructions that he had with his woman and subsequently lead her, right? And that didn't have anything to do with sin. That was just the way in which things were created to be. And we look at the Apostle Paul when he goes and he talks about women in leadership. When he goes back, his argument is creation order, the order in which humans were created. Man was created, and then the woman was created for the man. And so when we see this order that is in place, again, Numbers chapter 30 is something that helps us to understand the order and then also other components to that order. But just thinking about the idea of Hebrew culture that people want to connect themselves to, when we think about this idea of taking upon yourself another wife, when we think about this, is something that I often think about is when we look at Exodus 21 and 10. Let me make this bigger here. Read verse 10 right there. 21 and 10.
If he takes another wife, her food, her covering, and her marriage rights are not to be diminished.
Okay, very good. So one thing that we see as a command that's connected to this idea of having another wife, if he was to take another wife, a man cannot provide for all of his wives' food, clothing, and conjugal needs. he doesn't have the right, the ability to take on another one in the first place. And in fact, you're actually sinning if you weren't actually providing for all of your wives equally. Okay? And so the idea of taking these, people do this. People get these wives.
What they call them their wives?
Well, whatever. If they want to call them their wives, they identify as you can identify as whatever you want in these days and times. So if you sit up here and identify as the wife of another, right, and you are providing for your husband, this is a problem here, because if I have a wife and I'm causing her to be able to live a certain way with my one wife, right? And then so I say, well, I'm tired of this. I need to add another one to my situation. And then she comes in with her government assistance, and she is making it possible for me to have more things. But at the same time, maybe it's not enough for everybody. It's just enough for maybe her, and her, maybe she got a previous situation that's with her. But anyway, I'm saying that when we look at this over here, the man's supposed to be able to not have to take away from the wife that he has already in food, raiment, and her and the duty of marriage. And so as the man, supposed to be able to give my first wife all of the things that she was already having, and then also and the new one not take away from it. And I'm saying that if you add in another people, I'm just saying that she has everybody don't have government. But I'm just using that as an example. But I'm just saying that
she might have a 6-figure job.
She might have a nice job, but I'm just saying that this over here seems to make it seem as if the man is supposed to be providing for all of these things over here, not being provided for, not to get into a situation where he has a new mommy wife that's able to take care of him. And so that's just one thing.
But that's the norm. It's normally an accumulation of wealth. That's what it's looked at.
Yeah, where you have more wives and then she has more revenue and resources that she adds to the situation. Yeah, but I'm saying that it don't really coincide with the ways that things were.
I mean, it would be harder on a man to take. Okay, stop. No, stop. I don't know what the baby just did.
Okay, so another thing that people say, and we're gonna get back to Numbers chapter 30, but another thing that people say is that the Most High made a law for this thing, so he must have wanted for his people to do it, because he made a law for it. But if we was to go over and look at, let's go to Deuteronomy. I'm saying that the idea that the Most High made a law for something doesn't mean that he wants for you to do it. It means that he's setting boundaries around this thing that you're gonna do. Not necessarily that he wants you to do it. So let's go to Deuteronomy 17 and 14. Deuteronomy 17. Start reading at verse 14 down to 20.
When you come to the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and you shall possess it and shall dwell in it, and you shall say, let me set a sovereign over me like all the nations that are around me. And you shall certainly set a sovereign over you whom Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. set a sovereign over you from among your brothers. You are not allowed to set a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he is not to increase horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Mizraim to increase horses, for Yahweh had said to you, do not return that way again. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. And it shall be when he sits on the throne of his reign, that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book, from the one before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear Yahweh his Elohim, and guard all the words of his Torah and these laws to do them, so that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, and so as not to turn aside from the command right or left, so that he prolongs his days in his reign, he and his children in the midst of Israel.
Okay, very good. So we see over here this law that's given to Israel concerning what they should do in regards to making themselves a king. But in the first place, the Most High told the people that they didn't need a king. That he was going to rule over them to begin with. And so the whole reason why they was going to get themselves a king, because they going to say to themselves, let me set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. And so this is a problem to begin with, that the people want to make themselves be as the nations around them. And so the Most High, knowing that he has a disobedient people, says to himself, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and give y'all a law to govern this thing that I know you're going to do anyway. And so when we look at this over here, this is a perfect example of the Most High making a law not for something that he wanted for you to do, but making a law because he knows that you're going to sit up here and do this, right? Deuteronomy 8. Let's see, Deuteronomy 8. 19 and 20. Let's see here. 8 Deuteronomy. Oh yeah, that's it. Deuteronomy 8, 19 and 20.
And it shall be, if you by any means forget Yahweh your Elohim, and follow other mighty ones, and serve them, and bow yourself to them, I have warned you this day that you shall certainly perish, like the nations which Yahweh is destroying before you, so you are to perish, because you did not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim.
When we go and do the things like be like the nations, when we go and we look at the nations and we say we want to do like the nations, we want to do the things that they do, there is an end for those people, and it's not a good end, right? And so when we look over here and we see this law that was given for the people, again, just because we have this law, it doesn't mean that this is something that the Most High wants for us to be doing. If we're going to go ahead and do it in this way. Okay? And so when we think about, not to be talking about this, because this is kind of just like a side thing, but the thing that connects it is the fact that when we deal with these different issues, whether it be multiple wives or whatever it be, things that involve the Hebrew, quote unquote, Hebrew culture, there has to be a way in which there are checks imbalances in, this life that we live. Here, let's look at this. Let's look over in James. Let me see this. James chapter 2. Let's read verse 10.
For whoever shall guard all the Torah and yet stumble in one, he is guilty of all.
Okay, very good. So we have to understand that this Torah life here is a lifestyle that is just that. It's a lifestyle. It's a culture. It's a way of living. And we can't pick and choose the laws that we are supposed to follow. This verse over here is saying that if we stumble at one point, we're guilty of it all. So we're not able to just go and take the best parts. Somebody could make the argument that having multiple wives is one of the best parts. And, I want to take that because that, could make my life exponentially better. That could be a convenient thing that you want to take on. But the thing about it is we have to take on also all these other things that go along with it, that we're able to do. And so when we go, getting back to Numbers chapter 30, tying this all in, when we look over here, verse 1, where it says over here, Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes. Okay, the first thing that we see over here is the fact that Moses was to speak to the heads of the tribes. Okay, this is very important. Let's look at Exodus 18. Exodus 18, read from verse 21 through 23.
But you yourself seek out from all the people able men, who fear Elohim, men of truth, hating unfair gain, and place these over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And they shall rightly rule the people at all times. And it shall be that they bring every great matter to you, but they themselves rightly rule every small matter. So make it lighter for yourself, for they shall bear with you. If you do this word, and Elohim shall command you, then you shall be able to stand, and all this people also go to their place in peace.
Okay, very good. So we see over here in Exodus chapter 18, the place where Yethro, Moses' father-in-law, proposes to him some wisdom that ends up becoming Torah law, that Moses appoint heads of the tribes, able men who fear Yahweh, men of truth, hating unfair gain. Okay? This is something that is a part of Hebrew culture. Okay? We need a way to be able to have checks and balances and accountability within the nation. Okay? This is something that is part of the culture, and that when we look and see people, our so-called brothers and sisters are doing things that aren't the way that they should be doing them, someone's supposed to be able to say, excuse me, yes, you tripping, right? This is part of the culture. And so we have people who want to just be whoever they want to be and don't have anybody to answer to. They live their own lives. You know, the Holy Spirit told me to do this or that. And you're not supposed to say nothing to them. Meanwhile, Deuteronomy 16, 18 through 20. Let's see what that says. Deuteronomy 16, verse 18 through 20.
Appoint judges and officers within all your gates.
Hold on. He said appoint judges. Appoint, this word here is natan, which is to give or to put or to set up or to devote or to employ. Right? So you're supposed to do the things that's necessary so that you have judges and officers in all your gates. Keep on going.
Which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, according to your tribes. And they shall judge the people with righteous right ruling. Do not distort right ruling. Do not show partiality, nor take a bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Follow righteousness alone, so that you live and inherit the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you.
Okay, very good. So when we look at this, something that we can think about in terms of living this quote-unquote Hebrew culture and bringing this Hebrew culture back that people leave out and they get into these situations, but they leaving these parts out. The need to be connected to accountability. Appointing judges and officers. Right? Being able to apply community to your life. Being able to add order and structure to your Hebrew life. People of influence into your Hebrew life. People that are able to hold you accountable. If you want to sit up here and say that you have the right to have as many wives as you want, the Most High put boundaries around that thing. And you are supposed to treat these people a certain way. You can't just be sitting up here treating these people in the old kind of way. And Israel had judges and officers to be able to say, well, if you want to sit up here and have this wife over here, this other wife, you supposed to be taking care of her. You wasn't just supposed to it wasn't just a small thing.
And she wasn't supposed to be taking care of you.
That's what I was
She
saying.
wasn't supposed to be taking care of you. You supposed to be taking care of her.
Right.
You wasn't supposed to be using her food stamps and
Yeah. And so this thing got to be done in an orderly way. And so there's rules to follow when when you got just one wife, let alone if there's multiple ones. And so, but all of this has to do with the idea of community, right? All this has to do with the idea of having people that you are accountable to, that you're held accountable to, so that when things begin to go left, there's someone to say, you can't do that. You're supposed to be doing something different. You out of pocket. You out of line. right? And this law is saying to appoint these judges and officers. And so where's the people at that's out here pushing for Deuteronomy 16 and 18? As hard as they pushing for you to have where's my Facebook groups that's about appointing judges and officers and creating government? Because I could find some Facebook groups that talk about the poly life. I could find that easy. Hebrew multiple wife life. I could find that. But let me find the one that is about appointing judges and officers and increasing in government and checks and balances and accountability.
They appointing people, but they just like them. You know what I mean? They're not like the people that they're appointing aren't following this. They're following each other. Until
it comes to be something that's, as you say, uncomfortable. It's easy to go along with something as long as the people are all in agreement with one another. But when we think about the idea of judges and officers and accountability and all of these things, it's there's gonna come a time whenever you're doing something that you believe that you're supposed to be doing, and somebody comes along and say that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Stop doing it, and then you're supposed to stop doing it. And people be like, well, I don't feel led. I don't feel led to listen to what you're saying. I don't feel like the Most High is directing me in a way that what you talking about. It's easy for us to say that we are able to submit ourselves to this or that until the submission has to actually happen. Because it's not really submission if everything that you're doing is something that you already want to do. But as soon as I instruct you into something that you don't want to do, now we see what real submission looks like. Mm-hmm. Now we see. But that's what we are supposed to be as the body of Messiah is, there for one another to be able to help one another to get to the place where the Most High will have for us to be. If you're in a place that got government and checks and balances and people that, that's one thing. And I can't say nothing about people who are doing things like that in order where they don't just live unto themselves and are held accountable to anyone. If that's what you're doing and you have this thing set up properly and you're not able to just cast your wife to the side and just willy-nilly, then okay, then you doing it right. But for the people who just want to sit up here and gather these women and don't have no real bond connecting to these people, and they can just take them and leave them as fast as they want to that's out of pocket. If you took a wife according to the Hebrew culture, there's something that she was owed. And then once you decided you was gonna make her your wife, when you get to the place wherever then you wasn't gonna have her be your wife no more, then she goes away with something. You didn't just leave her with nothing. And so so these things are kind of there's a legally binding situation that is created. If you want to sit up here and say, well, I should have the ability to have another wife. All right, well, go somewhere, write up some papers, write up a contract. Because if you die, the law who takes over all of your situation is going to say, well, here's your legal wife. She gets all your stuff. And if there's a problem, she's going to say, well, yeah, you're right. I get it all. But if you go and draw up some papers somewhere and, get these things taken care of where they say that, oh, you get this much, this one gets that much, it was written up beforehand and all that, then now you actually making this thing be like a covenant real situation. And if you're doing that, I ain't nothing I can say about something like that. But if you just saying, oh, let's go stand under this tree and then I'm going to add you to my situation. Well, who's going to hold you accountable to that situation?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to do it?
I was going to say some men also feel that if they do a certain deed, that means that they're married.
No, yeah. Sex don't equal marriage.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We will see clearly in the scriptures, if a man goes and takes a woman who's not betrothed to anybody, I can't remember what the verse is. I'm just gonna say what it is. If a man takes a woman who's not betrothed to anybody, then a father is able to come and say to the man who took the daughter, you can either marry my daughter, which includes me giving you you giving me the bride price, or pay me the bride price, because either way you owe me for something that you did that you didn't have no business doing. And so, if sex equals marriage, then they will automatically be married.
Right.
And so that's but you're right. People do say that, but it's wrong. But we saying all that just to say, again, not to get caught up on this marriage thing, but to say that we need to be in a place where we have checks and balances and accountability. Let's look at Hebrews. And we getting back to Numbers chapter 30, but this got to do with it, because the thing that he's about to talk about in Numbers chapter 30, he's saying to be said to the heads of the tribe so they can enforce these things in the nation. Mm-hmm. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 19 down to 25.
So, brothers, having boldness to enter into the set-apart place by the blood of Yeshua, by a new and living way which he instituted for us, through the veil that is his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart of completeness, of belief, having our hearts sprinkled from the wicked conscience of our bodies washed with clean water. Let us hold fast the confession of the expectation without yielding, for he who promised is trustworthy. And let us be concerned for one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the habit of some, by encouraging, and so much more as you see the day coming near.
Okay, very good. Verse 24 says, let us be concerned for one another. The King James says, let us consider. Let us consider one another. We look at that word in the Greek, it means to observe, to learn thoroughly, to consider accurately, to view attentively. All right, so I am concerned with the way in which the people that belong to the house of Elohim are viewing me and the things that I'm doing. I have a high regard for those inside the house of Elohim, knowing that each one of my people that are my brothers and sisters in the faith, that they have a want and desire for me to walk in a certain way. And this is what the scripture is talking about when it talks about let us be concerned for one another, or let us consider one another to provoke unto love and unto good works. And so I'm supposed to be provoking you in love unto good works, and the same thing that you do towards me. But if we got to get past the consider part. If I don't consider you, if I don't observe or take notice, or if I'm not attentive to the things that come from you, then how are you going to be able to move me into a place of doing good works if I don't care about what you have to say about things? You can't cause me to do anything if I don't have a regard for you and the things that you say. And so this is an important part in verse 24. We're talking about let us consider one another. I have to first be able to consider you in order to allow you to be able to have any type of influence over me or in my life. But the apostle over here is saying, consider one another so that you're able to provoke unto love and good works. And by the way, all this stuff is being done when you're assembling yourselves together.
Mm-hmm.
Exhorting one another. And so much more. But just thinking about this word over here, consider. That's the Greek over here. Let's think about it from a Hebrew perspective. And we looking at this is all got to do with Numbers chapter 30. But we going back over, we going the long way. We look at Deuteronomy chapter 4. Let's think about the idea of consider, this word consider from a Hebrew perspective. Verse 39.
It says, and you shall know today and shall recall to your heart that Yahweh himself is Elohim in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. There is none else.
Okay, here, let's see this part here. If we was to look at this part here, let's see here if I can highlight it. This part here is the important part that you're supposed to be understanding. That Yahweh himself is Elohim in the heavens above and on the earth beneath, and there's none else. But the first thing that is being asked of you is to know it this day and to recall it in your heart. This over here. To know it, to have an intimate relationship with this thing, and to recall it in your heart. This is the word here, consider, which actually is shuv, which we would probably most be familiar with the word shuv when we think about the idea of returning or repenting, turning away from sin and turning towards the Most High. And so this word shuv includes the idea of turning. It includes the idea of changing.
You already pulled it up in the Hebrew?
No, we could look at it. I didn't put it on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Shuv. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm over here. Verse 39. Consider. There's a word here. Shuv. To turn back.
Okay.
To return. To retreat. Again. Right?
Similar to like remembering, right?
Yes. But but also when we think about the idea of returning, remember how these things that got to do with the Hebrew language, they're a lot of times they're kind of dual purpose. When we think about Shema, it's to hear, but it's to hear and to do. And so when we think about the idea that brings us to the idea of repentance or turning around, the idea of conversion is connected with the idea of repentance. So even though the word is giving you the idea of turning, there's also the idea also that goes along with it that is conversion and a total change. So you're not only turning around, but you're making a conscious decision to move forward. And so all of this has to do with, so he's saying this in regards to your heart.
Circumcising right there too.
And circumcising. So there's a removal of something. In this case, we're talking about the heart is the removal of the stoniness that's attached to your heart. And when the Most High talks about the circumcision of the heart, he talks about the removing the stony heart and replacing it with a heart of flesh. And so again, this is the condition of our heart when we talk about the idea of considering something. By the way, this very powerful thing that if we could understand the fact that Yahweh himself is Elohim in the heavens above and on the earth below and there is nothing else, if we could have that really truly embedded in our heart, that's going to cause you to have the type of faith that is necessary to live in this world. Understanding that the Most High is above all things. And you belong to him, and he watches over you. And so if we have this consideration that we're making in our hearts of this particular truth over here, there's nothing that is able to cause us to not move forward in the Most High. But we're saying all that just to say that the idea of considering one another is not a small thing. I'm treating you in a way is where I care about and put weight on the things that you say as my brother in faith. And the same thing should be true vice versa, right? And so how do we consider something, someone, when we're not connected to anything or anyone? Again, it's fine, it's all fine and dandy whenever, we're talking about something that is agreeable to you, but when we get into dealing with these things that go against where you are, we get into these issues. And so again, going back to Numbers chapter 30, this is all about government. This is all about Israel and dealing with checks and balances. Because again, it says over here, speak to the heads. Speak to the chiefs, so that when you come into these types of situations, you know how to deal with these things. Right? There's elders and judges in place. There's accountability structured. And this is the way that Israel always has been. And so again, when we think about this idea of returning to Hebrew culture, right? This is the epitome. This is the epitome of it.
It's funny too how like these politicians in this country will swear in on the Bible and make these vows, and all you gotta do is slip them some money and all that's out the window.
Yeah. But what they have in the midst of all of that wickedness is a picture or a semblance of the way that things are supposed to be.
Right.
they're hypocrites.
They're mimicking.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hypocrites.
They're
yeah.
hypocrites.
Blatant.
But somebody who's able to see and hear is able to look at the fashion, at the model that's being placed, that that they're making a vow to the God of the Bible, that they're supposed to be honoring. They're of course they're all hypocrites. But for those who have an eye to see and an ear to hear, we're able to look and see that they're showing us the way that things are supposed to be, but they're not doing it. They're not doing it.
But what make it just as bad as the people, you can tell they don't read it because you can clearly see they're not doing what it say.
Yeah.
You use it, but you open that same book up and you make laws contradicting what it say.
I'd like to see that Bible close hand because it's probably an upside down cross on that.
It probably don't. It's probably not even a Bible.
So yeah. We're only able to look to those people and the things that they do to a certain extent. Once you sit up here and try to really look at what they're doing, it's all wickedness. We have to be able to look into our book, and that we can actually open up and look and see what it is, and do the things that are within it, and not just the comfortable things, but also the uncomfortable things.
Do those things and live.
Right. And so, what we have in this chapter is dealing with how specific issues are to be handled, and in this case, it's dealing with the idea of making and canceling vows. Okay, so again, let's read again verse 2.
When a man vows a vow to Yahweh or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he does not break his word. He does according to all that comes out of his mouth.
Okay, very good. So we see that it's talking about when a man vows a vow. When he makes a promise to Elohim. Right? When you have this vow that you make that's connected to the Most High, a promise. Making an oral or voluntary promise to give or do something as an expression of consecration or devotion to the service of Elohim. Right? This is what you're talking about when you say a vow. Right? So when you have this vow, or if you swear this oath, right? It's given this thing where you swear unto the Most High, where you making this promise that you made to the Most High, or if you swear this oath. I'm trying to click on it from over here. Oh, there it goes. Swearing this oath, to literally swear, when they did these things, as if it being repeated, a declaration of something 7 times. We think about when Abraham made his servants swear that he was going to go and send them off, and that he was going to go and find a wife. And we look at this idea of swearing, and so the man, it says, he is bound by this thing that he said that he was going to do, whether it be to the Most High or whether it be before men. To bind himself by some agreement. He is not able to get out. right? This thing is pretty straightforward. If you said you was going to do it, then you're bound by that thing that you said you was going to do, and there isn't any. There's not a way out of it.
I mean, it's the covenant we made at the mountain. You know what I mean? That's why we in the situation.
I mean, that right there was a vow.
Right.
That the people said. They said, whatever you say,
Yep.
we will do.
Exactly.
They made a vow unto the Most High, and you know, they bound Israel. We bound our souls to the Most High. He said he was going to be our Elohim, and we said we was going to be his people. And so when we look at that, you know, when we see Mount Sinai as a perfect example, when we think about the fact that, you know, there was a vow that was made, and the Most High don't let his people out of this promise. We were bound to him, and he was bound to us.
Quick question. So, when the people did that vow at the mount, they said they was going to do it. They did it 7 times?
They did what 7 times?
Like, now we just read here, verse 2, when man vows a vow to Yahweh. It's 7 times.
Oh, this word here swears.
Or
So
swears.
this word here, to swear an oath.
But you're not just saying it one time and just walking off, right?
That's kind of the idea. This word here, swear, is connected to the word 7, which is the idea of completion. And so the way that you was to, like if I said I was going, if I'm saying dealing with you, because the one thing was vow unto Yahweh, and or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement. So if I'm saying that, you know, in the springtime, I'll dig up your whatever. The way that we make it an agreement is to have this kind of repeating of the thing that I said I was going to do for you. So there's 2 things here. There's a vow to Yahweh, and then there's the swearing of an oath to bind yourself. So it's 2 things, not necessarily to say that the people at Mount Sinai said it 7 times, where maybe they did. Maybe they did. The scripture don't say that they did. But it don't necessarily call it them swearing in an oath either. But they are making a promise to the Most High, which both things are included in this verse 2 over here.
Only reason I say that is because in my studying with marketing, when I used to do like Facebook and Google ads, it just triggered. I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar when you pulled it up and it was 7 times. In marketing, there's a rule of marketing of 7. It takes 7 times for a person to see something to convince them to buy it.
Yeah.
So I just think it's deep because, for instance, like for you to make a change in your life, a real change, you just don't. I want to do this.
Yeah.
You have to literally convince yourself. You gotta like blot out this stuff. It takes an effort. It takes. Yeah, because it's just not like that. Things just don't happen like that. So it's like. It's like a vibration that you are setting in motion, especially when you constantly say it. You're convincing yourself, because people are fickle. You just can't, like a child. You just tell them one thing, 3 seconds later it's gone.
Yeah.
But you gotta keep saying it. So I just thought it was interesting. Like even in here, it's like it's not a one-time thing. It's a constant thing. It's like you're constantly reinforcing these concepts. You know. I just thought it was interesting.
And that's the same thing when we think about the idea where it talks about how when you teach your children, you're prodding them, you're poking them, you're tattooing them with righteousness, so that they get these things imprinted in them. And so, yeah, going along with that, it's not just like you have a child and one time say, follow the Most High. I told him, I'm done. I said it. I told it to him before. But it's repeatedly doing it. And so, yeah, and so that is something that's included in the process of swearing an oath, and then knowing that this is just something that the word is connected to the number 7, and so the idea of swearing, there is embedded in the word from a Hebraic standpoint is the idea of this repetition is 7 times thing.
And just like, it don't even gotta be, we know something made complete, but imagine the times you hear like a song on the radio or see a commercial, you remember that thing till you die.
I know.
Certain jingles, the rest of your life.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah,
because
certain things
it's
exactly
things that you
it's
heard
repetition.
over and over again that are there, and they can't go anywhere.
There's songs I hated when I heard it, and then you hear it so many times,
and
you love it.
Yeah,
Brainwashed.
It's funny because I could be somewhere and hear something from my younger days, and not realize that I literally know the whole song, and don't even realize that I know it, but I heard it so many times.
And you didn't even care about it.
Over again, yeah, because things are just going on. It could just be background noise, really, of your life, and you just hear these things over and over again until they become embedded in your situation.
And this is why you need to surround yourself with righteous people who constantly speak in these things, to help you convert or to get you to the what's the word we using? What's the word? Not convert. What is it?
We're talking about accountability.
No, the other word. I know, right? You were just using the word you was going deep diving on. Not the swear.
The vow?
Not the vow. But basically the word to turn back.
The shuv.
Yeah. That word.
The consider.
The consider.
Yeah, the consider.
Like to reinforce that.
Yeah.
So I had texted in the chat. So like a man can't hide behind his wife. If you say you're gonna do something, you're like, oh, well, my wife said.
No, there's no.
She said she wasn't trying to have that.
No,
have me do X, Y, Z.
that's that. We don't see that here. This is real short. You get one verse. This is the general verse. 1 is just a general. This is what you getting ready to say.
She said she don't like that.
And it's real short. You whatever you say, that's what you responsible for. And there's nobody that could get you out of it. It don't even bring that up. If I stop right there, I don't know that there's a place where people can get out of things, because over here it says if you make a promise to the Most High, or if you bind yourself to some agreement, you can't break your word. Period. There's no way out.
If you do, you're a liar, you're a hypocrite, you know what I mean? All these, negative connotations.
Yeah.
Go along with.
There's no reversals. There's no reversals of this thing over here. And so it's the idea of hiding behind your wife is not even. You can't even. It's not something that we can even comprehend in this thought process, because all we have here is that we're not supposed to be. We got to do what we say.
That's why so many cultures and the highest what do you call it, acknowledgement is like when they phrase they use is you a man of your word. Like word's all you got. You might not have no money or whatever, but people will be like, hey, at least this person is truthful, or they do what they say they're gonna do. Yeah. Which
when I ask somebody to do something and they say they're gonna do it and they don't do it, I don't never ask them people to do nothing ever again. Never.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so when we think about this verse 2 over here, as a man, you must keep your word, period. Because you have no protection or covering in regards to your speech. There's nobody that come around and say, "No, he didn't mean that." Don't pay that no attention. There's nobody that could come and do that for you. Whatever you say, that's what you are responsible for. And again, it's speaking to the heads of the tribes. So somebody is supposed to be able to come and hold you to what you said. Because we're talking about all this is in the context of government and community. Somebody's supposed to say, "Oh, remember right here whenever you said you was gonna do this and that? Where's that? Where's that?" But if you don't have that, you don't got nobody to call you on the vow that you made or the oath that you bound yourself to.
Yeah, that's why our community is so out of control, is because there are no checks and balances. There are no people holding people accountable. We've been divided and individualized. You know what I mean? By society. It's like, society is trying to set up a culture that makes everybody separate.
Well, it's successful. You said trying.
You're right.
They did it.
Yes, you're right. You're your own boss. You're your own God. You're your own ruler. Your own, live your life the way you want to live it.
Wait, where the consequence at?
You don't do it. You don't do it. You're not dealing with the if you do it.
Right.
Because that you can't. You don't do it.
Right.
You don't do it. You're responsible. Your soul is bound. And so, but the thing about it is that if we don't have government, you say you're gonna do this or that. We don't got community. You say you're gonna do this or that. You get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
You get away with it. I said I was gonna do it, but whatever. I ain't doing that.
Well, then that's why things devolved anyway, and dissolved, and because any head that would take on the oath, you don't do it, either you out the community, or depending on the offense, you gotta die.
I mean, yeah,
And
depending
I
on what
feel like,
it is.
and that would really be like keep them more.
I mean, this is like the general thing. So we could get into other places where it talks about different consequences. But like if I said, if I said I was going to do something for you, and then I didn't never get around to doing it, and then you're able to go to the officers and the people to make me go do it. So the thing ends up getting done. Or like we see other places where if somebody breaks your thing, is where you're owed back the thing plus the 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Or those things is all incorporated in these. They come back around in other places, but it's all based on something that you said you was going to do for somebody. Somebody said it's going to do for you, and you not getting to the thing. And so there's no way around it for the man who makes this oath, who makes this vow. And so I wanted to go and look at what Yeshua says, because we just wanted to be clear on all this stuff. So start reading at 33 down through 37.
It says, "Again, you heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to Yahweh. But I say to you, do not swear vainly at all, neither by the heaven, because it is Elohim's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great sovereign. Nor swear by your head, because you are not able to make one hair white or black. But let your word be yes, or let your word yes be yes, or your no be no. And what goes beyond these is formed the wicked one.
Okay, very good.
It's from the
So
wicked one.
we see over here, we see what Yeshua has to add to the situation, which is really just strengthening what already is. If you said you want to do it, then you do it. You say yes, and you say no. If you say yes, then you're doing it. If you say no, then you're not doing it. But for you don't gotta sit up here and swear on your grandmother's grave.
Yeah, I know, right?
Be lying though.
And all my kids.
I never did all that, man. Yeah.
Lying.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm like, why you gotta do all that?
Like, yeah.
That's how you know somebody lying. As soon as they pull that out, I'm like, I don't believe this person.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta put your mom in it. I'm talking to you. What's your mom got to do with this?
Exactly.
Your grandma.
But it's all about your word being, that's the end of it. I said what I'm going to say, and that's the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, but, sometimes people look at this and say that Yeshua is saying that you don't make oaths. You don't swear at all. But again, when we see this Shem Tov over here, this is from the Aramaic, where it's giving you this idea that it's not simply saying to swear, but to falsely swear or to vainly swear. Because another thing is when we look over in Acts, look in the book of Acts chapter 21. It's interesting when we go over to starting at verse 17, we see some interesting things happen when Paul goes and deals with James, with Yaakov, who was the head of the Jerusalem church. The people, there was things that the people were saying about Paul, that he was telling people that they didn't have to keep the law. And so the leader of the Jerusalem church says, we got some people, some brothers over here who are finishing up this vow. You go and purify yourself and with them and finish out this vow with them, to let the people know that you do the law, that you're not opposed to it. And so we see, first of all, a couple of things. First of all, we see the idea of community, because Paul wasn't part of the Jerusalem church, but he was part of the worldwide church. He was part of the body of Messiah. And so he recognized the leadership over here, and he went along with the ruling that went forth. For one thing, but for the other thing, he participates in the fulfilling of this vow that these people had made. Here, read 17. Start reading from 17.
And when we had arrived to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. And on the following day, Shaul went in with us to Jacob, and all the elders came. And having greeted them, he was relating one by one what Elohim had done among the nations through his servants. And when they heard it, they praised the master. And they said to him, you see, brother, how many thousands of Yehudim there are who have believed, and all are ardent for the Torah. But they have been informed about you, that you teach all the Moadim, who are among the nations, to forsake Moshe, saying not to circumcise the children, nor to walk according to the practices. What then is it? They shall certainly hear that you have come. So do this. What we say to you, we have 4 men who have taken a vow. Take them and be cleansed with them, and pay their expenses, so that they shave their heads, and all shall know that what they have been informed about you is not so, but that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping Torah.
Okay, very good. So again, in this we see 2 things. First, that we see that Israel, after Yeshua, is still functioning in a way that involves community, government, accountability. They heard about a thing that Paul was doing in Jerusalem, and the elders got together and said, "You need to do this thing so that the people know what it really is." And he does it. But the other thing is that these followers of Yeshua were making vows. And they were completing vows. But this just had to do with Paul going and paying for the completion of their vows. So him participating in all of this. What do we have over here? Let's see here. All kinds of things. What's this latest one here? When Sarah told Abraham, "Let Yahweh judge between me and you in regards to her handmaid Hagar," Abraham was wise enough to say no, never mind, in so many words. Yeah, I mean, when you think about the fact the relationship between a man and a wife, the husband is indeed the head of the situation. And so as we'll look over and back in Numbers, there's rights that a husband has, over his wife. But we'll get back over to that. Just to finish up over here is the fact that when we look at what was going on in the time of Yeshua and thereafter, that the idea that Yeshua did away with vow making, that's not what he did. He wanted to be sure that people did what it is that they said they were going to do. And again, this was just an example of followers of Yeshua making and keeping their vows. But let's go back over to Numbers chapter 30, because we want to deal with the other end of it. If we could just read again. Let's just read again down through 3 through 6.
Or if a woman vows a vow to Yahweh and binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, or her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father has kept silent towards her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement with which she has bound herself stands. But if her father forbids her on the day that he hears, and none of her vows nor her agreements by which she has bound herself stand, and Yahweh pardons her, because her father has forbidden her. But
let's just stop right there. So down to 5, very good. So first of all, when we look over here, this is dealing with the father and his daughters. Okay, if a woman who is, as it says here, binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth. First of all, let's deal with the fact that it says vows a vow to Yahweh and binds yourself by some agreement. Okay, this is as far as we get over here in terms of binding yourself from an agreement and vow to Yahweh. Same thing for the daughter, because it's talking about the daughter and the woman that's in her father's house in her youth. This word here literally means in her. Here, let's look at it. I don't want to just sit up here and say it. Youth, the state of juvenility, young people, childhood, youth. And so they're speaking of this, I would say because the culture was, the woman in her father's house, stays for a certain amount of time until she gets married off. So while she's in her youth, she's at a time that's in her father's house. And typically, by the time she's not in her father's house anymore, it's kind of like these things are kind of going together because of the culture, because she was in her father's house in her youth. You have situations like with Moses' wife, where she was the oldest daughter. Leah was she got to the place of said she had weak eyes, and that she was like this old woman. I don't know how old she was, but she was older than the normal for a woman to be in her father's house still being unmarried.
You guys wasn't checking for that? What's going on?
I don't know, but she always say Leah had the most babies. And so she outshined all the other ones in regards to that. But anyway.
She was overdue.
There's a whole lot of them today.
But the thing is that the word literally means in her youth, but we have to think about the culture where a woman was under the authority of her father in his house, while she lived there. And so when we think about this over here, this woman in her father's house, her father was able to hear the thing that she said and either keep silent, which of course would be agreeance with the thing, or speak up and forbid the thing. And so we're able to see a difference now between the man and the woman, right? The man, whatever he said, it just had to go. But the woman in her youth, in her father's house, had this this level of protection and covering that existed over her that the man didn't have while she was in her father's house. She had this protection that was able to keep her from being bound to something that she may have said and bound herself to. The father, the the strength and power and leader of the house, was able to come and let her out of this thing that she promised herself to. And so we're able to look at this and understand that this is indeed a level of protection that the daughter had that the male doesn't have. It's a level of covering that she has that a man is not. He don't have that. Whatever he says, he's bound to that thing. But there's a way out for the daughter. Once the father hears of the thing, he's able to say, no, that's not happening.
Even though it ain't written here, but like even at a young man in a young age, like Jacob say some crazy stuff. I'm like, no, you out of control.
even though it's not written from a traditional standpoint, the thought was, from a traditional standpoint, the thought was a male child, probably what we would think of as being, where it talks about the ones who are able to go to war.
Oh, okay. Well,
If you was underage, you're not making
yeah.
you're not making no agreements that are binding.
If
You're not
still in the
even
household anyway.
you're not even counted amongst the people at this point. But a woman could get to a place where she's beyond that age, the quote unquote age of accountability, but still in the father's house, where she is able to have the thing that she say be canceled. And so this is something that when we look at is something that shows us, we're able to see through this the character of the Most High, where he creates this level of protection for the woman, right? People could say what they want to say, but there is a special place for the woman, and we see over here a perfect example of this, where this is something that she is afforded, that the man, he don't get this, right?
You think it's because don't hate me for it. You know what I'm saying? Y'all hear this? Don't hate me for it. But you think it's because a lot of not even a lot, but just women. I'm trying to use the words wisely, but they just make irrational decisions and decisions off of emotions, and say things and do things that they really
I was going
haven't
to say
thought
that,
through.
but you said it for me. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let's read verse 6. Let's talk about it. Let's read verse 6. Read verse, where did we read down to? 5. Read 6 and 7.
But if she at all belongs to a husband while bound by her vows, or by a rash utterance from her lips, by which she bound herself, and her husband hears it, and he has kept silent towards her, on that day that he hears, then her vows shall stand, and her agreements by which she bound herself do stand.
Okay, if we looked at verse 6 over here, if we looked at verse 6, we see this here, this rash utterance from her lips. This is something over and above now, what the father is able to do. Because the father talks about the vow, it talks about the promise, it talks about the vow or the binding that she makes in some agreement, which is all here. But when we look, there's more over here now that's added to the wife, the one who has a husband, where they have this rash utterance, this thing that she might say just kind of just in the heat of something, this emotional thing that just comes out. There was no thought behind it, just pure emotion. Where, first of all, it's interesting that this is added to the wife, where the daughter it don't have this. But it's interesting that we see this added level of protection now that's given to the wife, a stronger bond, a higher level of protection and covering that's given to the husband, that includes this whole thing of just this rash utterance, this emotional thing that comes out? Is it because by nature, the woman, generally speaking, is more emotional? I don't know, maybe, probably. But this verse 6 over here, that word here, let's see. Verse 6, rash utter out of her lips. So it's this word here. Mibtah, utterance, hasty vow, that which uttered out of. So this is just something that you just kind of blurts out. Right? That's kind of just, I swear I have this. Yeah.
Not much thought behind it.
Well, there's not any. It's just a harsh thing. But to me, when I look at this, the one thing that it caused me to think about is first of all, the importance of what a marriage actually is, because it's causing this relationship now for there to be, there was this bond, this father-daughter bond that's something. But when you look at the thing that happens when there's a husband involved, he has a greater, even what we're just saying, this additional thing is a greater level of covering and protection that he provides for his bride. I think that the Most High wants for us as men to kind of not be connected to these emotional things. He wants for us to do things from a logical perspective. Interesting thing, when we look over at
that ain't today.
well, it's definitely not. But when we
Yeah,
look at
these dudes is raised by women.
when we look at this situation here with the death of Nadab and Abihu, right? Where the Most High, oh, here it goes. Read verse 6 right there.
And Moshe said to Aaron and Eleazar and Ithumar, his sons, do not unbind your heads, nor tear your garments, lest you die, and wrath come upon all the people. But let your brothers, all the house of Israel, bewail the burning which Yahweh has kindled.
This is an interesting little component over here, going along with this idea of, leaving emotions behind. Because Aaron, operating from a place of emotion, his sons are gone. Moses say, you're not gonna mourn for these people over here.
Mm-hmm.
They was out of line and they deserved to die. Don't mourn for them.
That's
Take your emotion and put it to the side
straightforward.
and just deal with the way things are. They're gone. They're coming back. They didn't have no business doing that. And I'm gonna give you these instructions to keep things like this from happening again. But you're not gonna mourn from this. He told Aaron right there to leave your emotions out of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those was your sons. You was connected to them, but they was wrong. So they got to go. They had to go. It's over already. And so it's interesting when we think about this idea of vows and these rash utterances, where the Most High the wife being an older woman who, has got to the place where she has become a wife of someone out of her father's house. Now she may potentially have more interactions with people where she's able to even be in a place where she can have these rash utterances that she would do. Moses said, well, I know that she is this emotional being. I know that she's going to be out in the marketplace now, potentially, and saying this and saying that just out of emotion. You could cover that. You could protect that. She's going to be at a different level in her life where she has more access to more things, which is going to cause her to potentially say more that she don't have no business saying. You, husband, have the ability to cover that and protect her. Go ahead.
Well, I heard my mom said that the department stores when she was growing up, maybe before, if a wife went out and shopped, the husband could take the stuff back.
That's just proof that we just live in the wicked times.
But now it's changed, yeah.
We literally are living in
I don't
the
know if my
last
mom's
days.
on the chat, but that's one of the things she told me about whenever.
That's funny.
Said,
Wow.
the husband just takes stuff back.
They did a kind of study of how they marketed to women, just playing off of their emotions and got them to just buy and
Oh,
spend
yeah.
and shop.
Yeah.
Making them feel like they needed these things that they didn't need, and,
Mm-hmm.
and them on their emotions just was like,
Yeah, women buy the most things for the household. They spend the most. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, again, looking at the Most High and how he's dealing with his people, where he's able to take these things into account and make provisions for these things in his law. But again, he's showing us the fact that the husband, the father, is a covering and protection for the daughter or the wife, respectively. But more important, we see that the husband gives us a picture of a higher level of covering and protection. I always think about when we look at Numbers chapter 5. We look at Numbers chapter 5 where it talks about the law of jealousy. Read for us verse 18 right here.
It says, and the priest shall make the woman stand before Yahweh, and shall uncover the woman's head, and put the offering for remembering in her hands, which is the grain offering of jealousy, while the priest holds his hands the bitter water that brings a curse.
Okay, very good. So when the man takes his wife before the priest, we see this physical thing that has to happen over here before the woman is able to receive this judgment. And the physical thing that happens is also a picture of the spiritual thing that happens, where it says that the woman shall uncover it says that the priest shall make the woman stand before Yahweh and shall uncover the woman's head. Okay, the woman's head is uncovered so that she's able to receive this judgment from this other man. That's not her husband. The husband removes his protection covering from the woman and takes her over to this place so that she's able to be judged by this person who's not him. because that's what you do as a husband. You're the covering, protection, judge of your wife, not the priest, not some other person. Until you take away your covering. And then we see a picture of that right here. Whenever the man has this thought in his mind about what she's doing, and so he takes her to the priest, but again, before the priest is able to perform his duties, the protection is removed away from the wife so that he's able to do the judgment. Yes, no longer under his covering. Another thing that we see is when we think about Ephesians, let's go over to Ephesians chapter 5. Let's see here. Start reading at 29 down to 32.
For no one ever hated his own flesh, but feeds and cherishes it, as also the master does the assembly, because we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This secret is great, but I speak concerning Messiah and the assembly.
Okay, very good. He said over here that this secret, this mystery, this is a great mystery. He said in the King James. He's not talking about what you think he's talking about. I mean, he is talking about that, but a higher level of what he's talking about is Messiah and the assembly. So he's giving you the way that a husband is supposed to deal with his wife and how the wife is supposed to deal with her husband. But he's talking to you in that way, showing you how the Messiah is to his assembly. And so in the picture of marriage of man and wife, we're able to see a greater picture of Messiah and the body of Messiah. And so when we think about going back to Numbers chapter 30, where we see that there's a higher level of protection that the husband has over his wife, that's because this marriage relationship, there's a greater picture that we see within the relationship of a husband and a wife, because it helps us to understand and see Yeshua. You know, when we see the picture of a man and his wife realized. And so I just thought that was interesting that even when we look back in Numbers chapter 30, we're able to see the great importance that there is in the marriage relationship, the relationship between a man and a woman. We see, so going back to Numbers, we see a few things over here. We see in Numbers chapter 30, we see the idea of community, first and foremost. We see the idea of government and community and accountability in as it even begins. And then as it keeps on going, we see the idea of the fact that a man must keep his word. And then as it keeps going, we see the fact that a woman, she also must keep her word, but she's able to be let out of her word by either her father or more so even by her husband. And so in that, we see the idea of a covering, the spiritual covering. This is talking about a physical covering, but we also think about the idea of a spiritual covering that the husband provides, and we see that when we look back to Numbers chapter 5. We see got these things going on over here in the comments. What does this person say? I was thinking it might have something to do with the man being roped into fulfilling, being affected by whatever vow the wife or daughter makes. Well, yeah. I mean, you could look at it that way, but I think that to me, I feel like that lessens. To me, I feel like that kind of lessens the meaning if we just look at it from kind of a male kind of centered framing, as to say, well, the man's going to sit here and be punished by what she does. I guess that's a way of looking at it, but I would say that a greater way of looking at it is what I'm saying in terms of the level of protection that's being created for the woman, because she could potentially make a vow to someone that could potentially only hurt her. It might not have anything to do with the father or the daughter in terms of consequences might go, but she's still able to get out of it if the father hears it and says that he's going to nullify it. And so I think I think that the greater way to think about it is in terms of this being a literal protection that's provided, for the woman. Let's see what else.
I was thinking about what if Adam overheard Eve. What happened in the garden? He was like,
well, that's a perfect thing to think about, and that's kind of a case in point over here, because it talks about the fact of Adam being with her basically when she eats the thing. He was right there, and he didn't say anything, so he co-signs it. So he allows it because he let it go on. And so the thought there is the fact that he heard it, but he didn't nullify it. So he agreed with it. And so they both received the consequences of it. Right? And so, that's a perfect example. It's showing you this in action. Where he could have said, like I said, I told her what to do and she ain't listen, so that's cool. I got these other ones. I got these other ribs in here that you can go ahead and take from, and we can start this over again, right? That's what could have happened, but he went along with what she said. He agreed.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Didn't mean to take. No, you didn't take away from it. I don't think it's taken away. I think it's just another perspective, I would say. This is another perspective, I would say, and not necessarily taken away. I just think that it's a greater perspective to think about it as something that's not just like a consequence that's affecting the man, but just this a protection or a covering for what the woman might do that the man, by the way, don't have. He don't have an out, right? But okay, what's this over? This is why spiritual only, not husband or father covenant, can only go but so far. Yeah, when you think about the idea of a spiritual covering, this is not a spiritual covering is still a spiritual only covering is dysfunctional situation. We talk about a spiritual covering. We're talking about like if you belong to an assembly as a single woman and you say that my pastor is my covering, from a spiritual standpoint. Okay, but the idea of what we're looking at is natural. This is a natural thing where the man is he provides a total complete level of protection and covering for his wife. And so if I'm a pastor over a single woman, and we say that I'm her spiritual covering, but what about the fact that she can't pay the rent?
Mm-hmm.
Or what the fact that she needs some food on the table?
She might be at the assembly one day a week. Like, and
I mean, that's probably when what is she doing throughout the week? She might be the perfect person when you see her, but she got all kinds of things going on in her regular life that you're not able to deal with because you're not there with her.
Exactly.
And so the idea of a spiritual covering over a single woman outside of what we're talking about in terms of this community situation don't work. It don't work unless you're in a situation where I'm literally able, inside of the community, is literally able to be there and lead and guide you in your everyday life and all the things that affect you. If that's not going on, then it's just a partial thing. And the thing that we see over here is giving you the physical and is hinting to the spiritual. In fact, when we go back to Numbers chapter 5, that's actually showing you the spiritual part of it. It's where the priest is doing this thing, and this supernatural thing is about to happen that only happens after the man takes the husband takes his covering away. And so, yes, when you think about this idea of a spiritual only covering that a pastor might have for a single woman that belongs to that particular congregation, that still is an imperfect thing because you only dealing with one aspect, and we're physical people. Like,
the spiritual things are lived out physically.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't.
If we're in a community and we're all dealing with each other on a closer situation, that's a different thing. Because now, we have a greater relationship with one another, and we're able to actually deal with people, in a different way, as opposed to people coming together one day a week, and if the person got a problem or something, they have somebody who they call. But meanwhile, that's the problem that they want to deal with. They might got some other things that they need dealt with, but those ain't the things that they want to talk to you about.
Exactly.
But when you have a different kind of relationship, you're able to deal with those things in a different way. And so, the idea, again, this idea of this spiritual headship that's provided for, these single women, it's that is still a dysfunction.
Because technically they're supposed to be with their father still.
Technically.
The sad situation is that, most of, our women today wasn't even raised with their fathers.
Yeah.
So, the broken home is really like they don't have no covering, no man, no husband, no father.
What I'm saying is that situation can be rectified if we go all the way back to the first verse and deal with the idea of covering inside of accountability and community and government. Because one of the things that the Most High wants for his people to deal with, because if we keep on going, if we look down at verse here, read again for us. We saw that 6. Drop down to verse 9.
It says, but any vow of a widow or divorced woman by which she has bound herself stands against her. You said 11, okay. And if she vowed in her husband's house or bound herself by an agreement with an oath, and her husband heard it and has kept silent towards her and did not forbid her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement by which she bound herself stands.
Okay, so now we have added the widow and the divorced woman, right? It's interesting when we read these things in the English, and we can know what a widow. When we talk about a widow, a true widow is somebody who don't have a husband and who don't have anybody to take care of them. Right? And so, rightly speaking, you have that person who don't have anybody to take care of them. A widow won't have a covering situation, because she is not connected to anybody. Her husband is dead. She don't have anybody to cover her.
Mm-hmm.
But this book over here, this Old Testament Light by George Lamsa, talks about this word in the Aramaic, and it says divorce here in this translation, but it's thinking about the idea of a castaway woman, like who's abandoned or estranged, not necessarily somebody who received a bill of divorce, but like a castaway woman who doesn't have any connection to anyone, who's been kind of cast away. Where again, you have the idea where, she doesn't have anyone who's able to be there and, be a covering protection for her. She's in the open, right? She has no protection. So those people who aren't connected, have either been abandoned by death or whatever, widow or this estranged person, they don't have a covering. So if we was to just think about a person who was legally divorced, it would be different than like a castaway person, because that person in the culture, if you didn't have a husband, you went back to your father's house, right? What's this say? What are we? Isaiah 30 and. Can't really see this over there. Isaiah 30. Okay. Verse 1. Oh, okay. What's that say there, verse 1?
Woe to the stubborn children, declares Yahweh, to make counsel, but not from me, and to devise plans, but not of my spirit, in order to add sin to sin.
Okay, I'm saying this is a reference to spiritual covering. Woe to the stubborn children, make counsel, but not from me, and devise plans, but not of my spirit, in order to add sin to sin. So this is people who are dealing with people and getting counsel from people that's not of the spirit, and they're going off into sin from bad counsel. What did KJV say?
Woe to the rebellious children, said the Most High, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're covering with the covering, I guess that's an example of somebody not truly being covering. You're covering with the things that's insufficient. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that when you think about the idea of a spiritual only covering, it kind of is just thinking about things in one dimensional, and we have these other things that we have to deal with. You know, we're physical beings. We got things that we need. I gotta eat food. I gotta go out. I gotta deal with things. I need my heat to be on. There's physical things that I gotta deal with, and I need people to pray for me, and I need people to be there from a spiritual standpoint. But that's not the only thing that I need.
I need help. We all might.
I
We all
need
need
other
help.
things.
Could need help, and so yeah.
And so I'm saying that me, I feel like this right here, people that's covering me with the covering, but not by the Spirit. This is an example of somebody. This is an insufficient thing, almost to the point where it's a negative thing because you're adding sin to sin. It says in this verse over here, this is not helping me. This is bringing me further down. And so the best case scenario is a husband and a wife, right?
You guys listen to the Mosaic. It's clear. It said, "Woe to the stubborn children ain't listening."
No, they not
ain't
listening. They're
anyway.
stubborn, right? And so what we have to be able to get back to, and what I think that this chapter is helping for us to see, like I said, is these things that deal with dealing in community, right? Dealing in community where you have things in place where you are able to be helped by your the rest of the people in your community. This is how Israel was set up from the very beginning. And so when we look over here at these people who want so badly to be back in touch with the Hebrew culture, these things right here should be first on the list, right? Especially when we sit up here and have these people who don't want to be connected to anyone, and this is showing you. This helps me to see that I need to be connected to somebody. Because if somebody catch me in my vows, breaking my vows, somebody need to catch me and be like, you in sin, my brother.
Man, my children be like, look. That's what I like about teaching them. And I ain't perfect. Sometimes they be like,
they gonna catch
but
you.
what you doing? And I'm like, you're right. and that's coming from my children. But that's being right. That's community. You setting it up. But if you just
you could say, shut up, kid. Get out of here.
Look. In my household, growing up, my mom was like, "This is my house, my rules, whatever I say." But you couldn't call her out on nothing she would say or do. She doing this stuff. Do what I say, not as I do. What? But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, again, when you look back over here, again, as it talks about the widow and this divorced woman, how, these ones who lack this connection to either a father or a husband, how they, whatever they say for themselves, they're bound to it. Where it's giving you this picture of something that is lacking. And so this thing that we see kind of towards the end of this chapter, at least me anyway, causes me to want to be able to restore back to where it begins, in terms of beginning with the idea of speaking to the chiefs of the tribes. Is that we have this need for there to be community and protection and covering for people in this Hebrew life. It's not set up for us just to be lone wolves and just going off and doing whatever it is that that we think is right in our own hearts and our own minds, but he set it up for us to be able to be accountable to people. He set it up where, he provides this extra level of protection for those that are not able to protect themselves. And so, that's why when we think about I think it's Deuteronomy 18 and 10. When we think about the Most High being manifest, he's manifest through the working of his character in. No, it's not 18. What is it? I need my Bible to be able to find it. He grabbed my Bible from out of there. But the Most High is manifest through the working of his character through us, and in places where he talks about the manifestation of his character. Hey, look at this. He don't leave people just out, just with nothing. Start reading at 16 then.
Wash yourself, Isaiah 1:16. Wash yourselves and make yourselves clean. Put away the evil of your doings before my eyes. Stop doing evil. Learn to do good. Seek right ruling. Reprove the oppressor. Defend the fatherless. Plead for the widow.
Okay, very good. He cares about those that aren't able to care for themselves. Reprove the oppressor, the ones who's oppressing the ones who's not able to defend themselves. Defend the fatherless, the one who don't got a father. Defend them, the ones that are not able to defend themselves, and plead for the widow. Right? He cares about those that aren't able to care for themselves. So again, we think about this whole idea of walking out the character of the Most High. It deals with being a protector to the ones who need to be protected. Right? It's about being there for those who need help and protection. Well, I think that's good enough anyway. And so when we think about this in regards to Numbers chapter 30, and we see this whole thing with the vows that people make, and the picture of the covering and the protection that the man provides for his wife, or the father, that provides for his daughter, and also, like I said, where it deals with the idea of the Most High showing us this thing that we see through, this thing that the Most High created through marriage, and the man and the woman. When we think about, from a natural standpoint, the thing that's provided for the wife through the connection with her husband, and we see that Paul talks about this great mystery that exists with the relationship between the husband and the wife, and him really talking about the Messiah and the assembly. It helps us to understand the way that Messiah deals with us. The fact that he's able to be a covering and a protection for his bride, greater than she's ever experienced before. He's able to be there as a covering for his bride when she speaks out of turn. When we go outside of the parameters that we're supposed to be within, Messiah is able to bring us back. And we should seek to have a right relationship with Messiah so that we're able to have the protection and the covering that he provides. Understanding that we're lacking outside of that. Again, we look back in Numbers chapter 30, again, seeing that there's a greater level of protection for the bride than there is from just the daughter. And so when we think about the fact that his people as the bride, we have a greater level of protection when we're connected to the bridegroom, when we're connected to the husband, right? And so we need to be out here seeking to be connected to Yeshua and maintaining the way of life that he sets forth, right? Because if the wife is functioning properly according to the ways of her leader, her husband, she's not going to be out making these false vows, these vain vows in the first place. But in the event that she does, she has a husband that's able to rescue her from her issues that she has created. But if from her rash utterances, right? But if she's operating correctly, it don't even got to get to that place, right? Where this really helps us to understand where our master Yeshua has put forth a way that he would have for us to be, and he expects for us to live according to the things that he's put in place. But in the event that we happen to get beside ourselves and step outside of the boundaries, he's able to reel us back in and erase the wrongs that we have done. And so I just think that it's very interesting that we're able to look and see inside of these things. We're able to see Yeshua in all of the Torah, and when we seek to find him over here, it just helps us in every way. All right, so that being said, does anybody have any last questions or comments about any of this that we dealt with in terms of Numbers chapter 30?
That scripture you quoted earlier about
Which
if a man entice a maid that's not betrothed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was Exodus 22, 16, and 17. If anybody's
Yeah. What was it?
Exodus 22, 16, and 17.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause that's one that they use. I mean, that's one that they need to use, because it shows you that sex is not, it don't equal marriage. It's something that was created for marriage, but it wasn't the thing that said that you was married. But again, that's just another example of people, you know, they come up with these doctrines and these things, and they're just not rooted in truth. And you know, thankfully, Messiah is going to return, and he's going to restore everything. We're not going to have to deal with all of these things that people have done with this thing that he is the chief cornerstone of. You know, we have to remember this thing that we build upon. We build upon the foundation that was laid by Messiah and his apostles. And so we got to be able to go back to the things that he said and it be going along with that. And anything else is just
Something else.
it's something else. Okay, what's this here? The primary covering is not of the flesh but spiritual. The heads need the covering of Yeshua to be proper covering for others.
Say it again.
The primary covering is not of the flesh but spiritual. The heads need the covering of Yeshua to be a proper covering for others.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole idea, I think, is it's not just a straightforward thing, actually, because when you think about it, we have to think about things, I would say, from a holistic standpoint. In other words, it's not just one thing. Like, it's a complete thing. And so,
I would say one thing precedes the other because like what you're saying.
They're connected.
Yeah. Because on the spiritual end, you know that you need the physical part.
Yeah.
So, spiritually, I got to be around accountability. So then, it ties, you know, yeah.
I mean, there were people in the first century who, you know, they're known as Gnostics, spiritualists. Everything was only spiritual, and they didn't really deal with the physical aspect. And so,
just go to the spiritual realm then.
Right.
Just be there.
I think that it has to be something that is all inclusive of all of these things. First of all, just dealing with the first part of that is because one thing, as you said, facilitates the other. If I want to be able to be a covering, a protection over anyone, it has to be a complete covering. In other words, if I pray for the safety of my wife and I watch somebody come and take her, I'm not being a covering and protection over her.
Yeah, you just gonna pray about it.
Right, I'm gonna pray for the strength to go and do something about it. Right.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a mixture of the both. And that's what I'm saying is where we think about a spiritual only covering. That's why I'm just saying only. If it's not a complete, it's incomplete.
The spiritual governs the physical.
Yeah.
So the spiritual causes the physical thing to be done.
Yeah.
You can see what's spiritually happening by what's physically happening.
Yeah.
Because you can say anything you want. If you can't see it, you can say anything.
And then the other part, when we think about the heads need the covering of Yeshua to be a proper. Okay, see, I love words. A proper covering for others. Okay, but it was just causing me to think about the fact that if a single woman, if a married woman has a husband and the woman is in the faith and the man isn't in the faith.
Mm.
That's her husband. Who gonna go around that? Who go around it?
I'm gonna let you talk.
I don't believe you can go around it.
No.
You know, that woman is the wife of somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's
Unless he gave up, like
that's
when
a
he went to the
problem.
priest.
Until he
Only way.
relinquishes that thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then, until he relinquishes that thing, you know, this. I mean, you can't get around that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just from the natural thing. Natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything outside of that is dysfunction.
But she said, my pastor said.
And that's what it get into. And so now you got this wife who, or her pastor's telling her one thing, and then her husband's telling her another thing. I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's why.
That's gonna create
divorce is so high in the church.
I mean, come on. And so we have to. I'm saying that we have to be able to think about things from a holistic standpoint. That whole situation got to be fixed, because if it's just the wife getting herself together and the man is just, I mean, he protecting physically, and he's protecting, you know, from a physical standpoint, taking care of the physical needs, but from a spiritual standpoint, he's off, right? But that don't make him not the husband no more.
Right.
He's still the husband, right? And so, you know, but so that whole thing got to be addressed,
Yeah.
in order for that thing to be able to come together. Somehow, somebody got to get to that man,
Yeah, that man.
and deal with him so that his house can be in order. But you can't go around him though.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, you can't go around him. You got to go through him. You got to go through the husband.
Mm-hmm.
Because anything else is just, it's
Out of order.
dysfunction. It's
Yeah.
out of order.
Mhm.
It's dysfunction. And so, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, you got to have all of these things. When we look at the book, it's spiritual.
Right.
But,
To be carried out.
It causes the book's supposed to cause
yeah,
action. Right.
yeah. It's a spiritual book that got to be carried out in this physical realm.
Right.
And these things look like something.
Right.
And so, you know, we have to be able to bring all these things together. And, you know, the problem that we face is that, you know, people are just grabbing at parts. But we need the whole situation to be able to really get to the bottom of things. And it's, you know, when we look at this again, it's a complete thing. So it's definitely a hard situation, and it's a real situation that we face, because people is out here, these women out here is hearing a word, and then they believing in this word. But at home they got that husband who he doing whatever. And so, you know, that's a disconnect.
But the non-believing husband could be saved by the believing wife.
That could happen. That's the best case scenario.
As I guess as long as he ain't
But
too
I'm
gone.
saying that got to be the point of the thing, though. But I'm saying that his domain.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, it's just not,
Yeah, that's
it's just not right. It's a problem that needs to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that you can't ignore it. I'm saying you can't just, well, he'll come around. Like the you know, that got to be addressed, because it's not, you know, it's not right.
right.
But that's again going back to the whole community thing. You know, we got to have these things in place. so that maybe they could go and the community could go and deal with that situation and help foster change in it.
Right.
But once you go around that husband, now who are these people to sit up here and do this or that? You gonna get an attitude about it. I mean, if you already in the flesh anyway, you gonna get an attitude about it unless things is handled correctly. And so I'm just saying all that just to say that these things are all inclusive. They involve the mind, the spirit, and the body.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't know you was about to say
No,
something.
go ahead.
No, I just was saying that it's also whenever you talk to a young woman's father instead of talking to her, some Israelites don't understand that. So instead of you dealing with the daughter, you deal with the father.
Oh, you mean like if I'm a
Like
young man?
if you want to talk to someone about their teenage daughter.
You mean as a young man trying to...
No. I'm
Great.
saying. Well, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like.
Well, you just made me think about that because that's a good point,
But yeah.
and that's something that we don't do in this day and age. They used to do it back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
If you see somebody that you like, oh, this she, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to take you to the movies and stuff.
Yeah.
The first thing that you supposed to do is
Right.
you supposed to deal with her protector, her covering,
Right.
her daddy.
Yeah.
You think it'd be alright if I,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
If we go to the movies or something like,
Love.
before you make the move, you supposed to make that move. But we got away from that, and at least these people in this culture at one point there's things that they slowly got rid of over time.
Yeah. Right.
And that
Liberation.
aspect of going back to the head,
Right.
and that thing dissipated. And so we don't think, let somebody think that they supposed to be able to just come around and be hollering at minds without dealing with me first.
Exactly.
I don't care how good of a person you is, you done canceled yourself already because you
Absolutely.
ain't start off right.
Right. Well, these people.
You done
first of all,
disqualified
in
yourself.
this society, these people don't even know that. So it's
Listen,
the right of entry anyway.
ignorance don't excuse sin.
No, they don't.
It's
They
not
definitely
excuse.
don't.
If they don't know, then that's their fault.
They gonna learn the hard way.
They did a research.
Learn the hard way. That's how it goes. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But again, that's part of this whole thing that we see in this chapter. It is the idea of headship and covering and protection. Somebody, talked to me at one point talking about the idea of, well, we look at the scriptures, the husbandman, is the controller of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And as a husbandman, your garden, the place where you plant your seeds, and the seeds grow into little trees that have their own seeds that grow.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can come into your situation and take your fruit from out of your garden.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta give it to you.
Yeah, you gotta ask the right way. Or purchase the fruit. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Somehow, some way, I had to give it to you. You can't take it. And so the same thing is true when we think about that in a family situation. There's a head of the family.
mm-hmm.
And if you want to partake of the things that come out of the family, it has to be given to you. It can't be taken.
That's the sad thing when I think about Deuteronomy. He said that, like, to the effect basically in Deuteronomy 28, where he said that he was going to cause these things to come upon us till we be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And like to destroy the family,
Yeah.
that's just That's
Yeah.
the worst. That's really the worst thing you can do to a person.
And that's
Like,
and that's actually and that has been done.
yeah.
And so in this path of reconciliation that we embark upon, there's all of these different aspects that we had to set out to restore.
Yep.
Restoring the individual, restoring the family, restoring the community. These are the things that we are, commissioned to do, as we build this kingdom of heaven. And so there's all these things. It's a huge task, but we got to be about His business.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That being said, is there any other things that anybody wants to talk about? Okay. So that being said, for now, I guess we'll go ahead and be done. For now, we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the Shabbat. Y'all willing, we will be back on next Shabbat, continuing on with our look at the Torah. Remember to share the video, like it, put some in the comments, and let people know what we're doing over here. Again, y'all willing, we'll be back. For now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
See you